Good morning. This is Norma for Norma Talks. Now, as often happens with me when I get up, I have ideas that I may want to share with you or concepts here and there and where to place them. And sometimes I'm a little, would you say, unsure. Two things I really want to just address. If at all you watched or heard the Monday night live show on mental mind treatment, one of the things you'll hear me talk about a lot is that there's one power, one essence, and the universal love force, which I talk about a lot on Wednesdays anyway. And I find that sometimes people don't really quite understand what that is. So I'm going to talk a little bit of the story of how I became aware of the love force, number one, and how I came to understand other aspects of it. When I was doing a very early, well, it wasn't really early for me, but in the sense of age, but I was doing a 9-month course. One weekend a month, we went into this training. And one weekend, one of the weekends, though there were very few of us in the class, but one of our classmates had an experience where he went up, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. He felt like he went up and sat on a swing with Jesus, and he felt full of love and everything. Now, on that way home from that weekend, I cried because I wanted to feel that. I wanted to be aware of that. And so that was very much on my mind when I went back into class or group or whatever you want to call that the following month. And then I had a different experience. I wasn't like up on a swing, and Jesus certainly wasn't there. But what I felt was this energy, very loving, very caring, just a sort of a little bit around. I'm going to sit down in my chair here, a little bit around me. I knew in that moment that that energy had to come inside me. It wasn't like out there. And actually, if you look at a lot of philosophies, everything is out there. You know, you pray out there or you do out there or whatever. But I knew. Now, how did I know that? I don't know. I had been questioning God since I was at least 7. And so it was like, okay, so bring this energy in. And from that moment forward, I would work at bringing this energy in. Every time I connected into that love energy, I would bring it in. I would bring it in. A number of years later, when I was studying with a group in Vancouver, and doing their classes, it was actually a church. But it was a metaphysical church, and I went all through their classes, and it was connecting to a lot of information similar to what I had in my tarot work and tarot classes and other metaphysical things I was doing, and they dovetailed very, very nicely. And again, I began to be aware of certain things of how they worked, but I also was aware of this energy, this love energy that I could tap into. And I began to realize as I tapped more into it and brought it more in my body, as my body got used to it, that I began to be able to access it quite easily, actually. And I always used to feel like I was going in and dropping down into it because I had built sort of, you might say, a reservoir in the trunk of my body of this love energy. That I also knew that it was everywhere. And as time went on, and I read a little bit about science where it talked about no matter what the object is, whether it's the wooden table that I've got my hands on or the lamp that I have on here or the keyboard, the computer, that everything is made up of little molecules of some different varying sizes, but there's always the same amount of space in them. Now, no one's come along and said to me that the love energy is the space, but I somehow felt that. I felt that's what connects everything, that everything is connected. And in people who do miracle healing works, I'm not necessarily a hands-on healer, and yet I do and can do certain things with my hands. But some people have this phenomenal ability to be able to utilize their hands and heal. So what is this energy? And so anyway, I was just working away with understanding, and my life led me into many different things. And this had been predicted, funnily enough, when I was like 22 with 2 little kids. And what at the time my tarot teacher said to me, You'll be a good reader, Norma, because of your life's experiences. I honestly thought he was nuts. What experiences? I'm a mom with two little kids. What experiences am I going to have, kind of thing? Well, I have had many different experiences. I've had pluses and minuses and changes and happy times and sad times. So when I have my clientele started coming to see me, it was like I knew a lot of them. Not everything was a big mystery because of my own experiences, and some of them were fairly bizarre. I'll tell you, some of them were fairly bizarre. Anyway, life went on, and I knew this energy. I had the technique that I use basically on Monday nights. It's not exactly because it's been it's been changed a little bit because of my own experiences, and I explain that. That's why I call it mental mind treatment, not spiritual mind treatments, which is what I was trained in, because I add my psychic abilities that come in there, and sometimes as I'm praying, you might say, all these other things come out as to why there are blocks or why there's things happening. Now, so, okay, the years tick by, and I get more and more interested in about how to transform blocks that are inside, mainly because I had quite a lot I had to deal with. I had, I wasn't, what would you say, in my life, I've had situations happen that I had to eventually deal with to begin to come, quote, more whole. Now, so I knew, again, the love worked, and I created what I call a frozen child technique, where how we freeze in space and time. I began to realize that parts of me were frozen and they needed to be unfrozen, growing up and integrated with me in the present. So I did quite a lot of work with that. Then I realized there were still limitations. The clients sometimes were getting so far. So I sat down, and another whole element came in, which is what I work mostly with today, which is transforming energy and looking at different techniques that I had learned, finding others, different levels, different systems, different parts. And then one day, on a New Year's Day, I read a book written by, I cannot remember the name, but it was I think it was South Korean guy had written this book. Korean guy, maybe Korean, maybe not South, but somewhere. And in it, he talked about how he would go back, way back to the original source. And I went, well, if he can do that, I'm sure I can do that. Nothing like being, what do you say, optimistic. So I sat down, and I have to mention one thing on the side. New Year's Day, I've always spent, mostly in my life, giving thanks and contemplating where I want the next year to go. So I sat down and I said, okay, I want to go back. I want to go back. I want to go back to the beginning. Now, I didn't quite make it at that time, but I began to get a sense of how the soul works and where it comes from. So I kept practicing it. I found out friends. Do you mind if we take a look at where you came from? Would you let me? And it's, again, practice makes perfect. And when I first started, I didn't really go back to what I call the source. But it wasn't very long in going back through time. I'll come back to some of the journeys in a minute. But I began to find the same thing. I began to find where the souls came from, how they came, and the beginning of their journeys, and where the soul traveled and what kind of things they did, and how I began to learn a lot about our universe, different planets, different dimensions. And it seems like most of us at some point or other have had lives in the space travel part. That was really amazing to me. I began to learn different things because I've been on spaceships looking at this and looking at that, with just following a person's soul journey and what they were dealing with and what they were learning and what they were grabbing. Because I only wanted major things, and it wasn't like every little thing. But I began to also realize that out there, and all these different planets. Now, the dimensions are different because they have a different energy, but planets, I wasn't finding love. And even right at the beginning, when I go right back to when we first come into being, and these little wee souls come as they come out, sort of come out as just like a a big balloon that's dispelling these little droplets, and these droplets are souls. Sounds crazy when I say it that way, but that's what it appears like. I was looking for love. I was looking for this universal love that I feel here. And I was looking for it, and I wasn't finding it. But what was I finding? I was finding thought. I was finding an awareness. I also found, and what I call them is the watchers, is that there is a group of people that seem to be very watching as the souls come out, and some grave them. I read that in a book somewhere, and I went, all right. But I've seen them kind of do that a little bit, not as much as this book determined from hypnosis that they had done. But what I did find is that every soul has a potential, and that you begin to go off and begin to experience. Some are guided, very definitely guided, like special, like this is where you're going to go and this is what you're going to do. But all the planets that I visited, where was the love? There's no love here. Then you come back to planet Earth. And I began at this point, now, take a look at Earth from a whole different perspective. I began to realize the differences that this beautiful planet has. First, it has a lot of water, but there are water planets, and I've seen those. But what makes this planet different? What makes it that people come here and find it difficult to leave? Some of us have been here a long, long, long time. Some dip in and dip out. I understand that. But how come? How come some of us get stuck here? Because that's what it is. I hear people say, "Oh, I just want this to be my last life. I don't want to be here anymore." Then I began to realize, to a lot of us, that is not the way to go. So a couple of things I came to the conclusion of. A, this is an emotional planet. It's not about thinking. Even though thoughts create, don't want to take that away. But it's not about the mentality of it. It's about the feeling of it, because it somehow, and I haven't figured quite out yet, it creates this love vibration that is here. It is a loving vibration. And in that vibration, as you connect into it, you feel loved. And it's there for you. It is not judgmental, as many of the books have been written about judgment and, self-forgiveness is important, yes, because you've got to clear yourself and when you feel guilty about certain things. But on the whole, the essence of this planet is wonderful. Not only is it beautiful, because it is, but it has this essence in it. If you allow it in, if you feel the love of the universe that has, it's of the earth, sorry. I tend to talk about the universe, but it's really our earth. The love of the universe comes in, what begins to happen is that it's just everything works, number one, but are you beginning to be aware of how important? Because I've come to the conclusion, now this is my conclusion, that until we are able to deal with all of our feelings without regret or reaction or saying, oh, I don't like that feeling. A feeling is just letting you know something. I always teach it this way. A feeling is your body's way telling you what you're feeling. It's a feeling. So you name it. You give it the name of what it is, and it subsides. It goes away because it's done its job. Emotions are different. Emotions are all those that we repress. We don't want to feel that. We don't want to feel that. The less you do that, the easier it will be for you to leave this planet, because you can. And you can leave because there's nothing here that you are at odds with. Now, the only other time that we get to escape this is when the earth decides it doesn't want us here anymore. And I've channeled this information once. I've read it in a book once, which is qualifying to me that what I heard, what I was giving, was that the earth will rock. And at that point, souls are free to leave or not. That there are different vibrations when we leave our bodies. This body, I leave it. Where is the vibration I'm going to go will depend on how much you've dealt with your feelings, how much you are at one with the lovingness that's here, and where you decide you want to go. Some will leave. You will go to a different aspect. But usually it's usually a forward momentum, but that's a whole different story. Why are past lives important? I just comes into my mind right now. Why are past lives? Someone's asking that question as they're listening. Where does past lives fit into this? Because once we're in the vibration of Earth, we come as a soul. Another little piece I found was that when the soul comes in, it'll come into this world, Earth's vibration, sometimes hesitantly, sometimes excitedly and looking forward to it, sometimes as a group. And often if you come in as a group, you're always looking for your group, like, where's my group? I feel alone. And often you're running or hiding from something else that's happened. It's like you're escaping. Maybe your planet exploded. I've seen that several times. Maybe you're just trying to escape because you have different viewpoints from the way you were. Lots of rebel stuff goes on in some of these planets. So here you come and you arrive, and now you take on a body. It's got feelings. You're not used to that. And then, so what happens is that whatever that sense of where you wanted to come gets, you go through it often many, many, many lifetimes. And then, all of a sudden, it's like you begin to become aware of, well, there's something more. The soul begins to sort of look at different things and realize, well, I'm just on this little road rotating and I'm tired of that. So what else is there? And that's where past life regressions come important. That's where we begin to let go. And also other techniques, which I know I've worked on, I know other people have too, to dissolve and to let go of feelings that create blocks within us so that we keep creating the same thing over and over again. How many of us notice that? I mean, I noticed that quite early, like, this thing feels familiar. Like, when did I last do this? And sometimes our belief systems are so set in the subconscious. Now, I did a lot of growing in the 70s. And in the 70s, one of the books we all read was The Power of the Subconscious Mind. Today, I don't hear people talk about the subconscious mind. Sometimes when I'm working with a client, I'll go, jeepers, we've got to go deep in that subconscious and pull those weeds out. In other words, weeds are thoughts, patterns, belief systems that have been buried way down there, but they keep, it's just like like weeds in the garden, they keep coming up. It's like, we got to get those weeds out. And that's the fun part for me, is going in and finding what, where, and whenever. I just recently had another, it is not uncommon, having genetic stuff coming through from, centuries, passed on down in family lines. Like, there's so much to be able to move out. And how do we do that? Connecting to love, connecting to the love force, letting go, not being attached, not being stuck, not being, it's got to be this way. Wherever you're tight, it doesn't really work well. I know, because I've hit my head on every little corner that there was. I fought every little thing. And I just finally, it's called a little word called surrender, which I, by the way, used to fight about. People say, Norma, you just have to surrender. And I'd go, I wanted to fight. What do you mean surrender? What I've learned is by really recognizing how loved we are, that it's not a fight. It's just acceptance that we always do the very best we can. We always, when we want to connect to that loving force, that it is available to us, that we can do that it can come in and allow us to be. I know on this last Monday night of my mental mind treatments, it was such a great evening. We had a lot of people coming on, which was great, different topics, but it gives me that opportunity to really connect into the love force. So when I come away, I just felt peaceful, and it just felt right. And I've had a couple of thank yous already from people who listened, and because, we're not different. So when I give a mental mind treatment for one, it can apply to thousands if they were listening. And that's what I'm hearing from emails, etc. now, is I listened and, it just seemed to relate so much to me. And because we're not that different, we all have issues. And yeah, even me. And so it's knowing how to release those and how to work and how to move through and how to understand. So we're privileged to be on this planet Not only a beautiful planet, because some aren't very beautiful. So this is beautiful, and it loves you. It's happy to welcome you here. It's happy that you're here, and it will do anything to help you create the life that you want to create. And that's where thinking comes in, and often I talk about that, but that's not for today. We're talking about connecting to the love energy that is here for you to come inside, knowing you're absolutely loved for who you are, right here, right now, and to allow that energy in. Whenever you touch into it, don't rebuff it. Allow it in, breathe it in. And there is, at one time, there's some meditations where they say we breathe in love. You got to feel it, though. You got to feel it. You got to feel that being accepted 100%, and then breathing out anything that is not love. And even that little time, a few times a day, can make a huge difference, because it is a sense of getting used to the feeling of being totally 100% accepted, and knowing no matter what, you are loved beyond measure. Beyond measure. We can't measure it. It's just pure, total acceptance. It just comes to mind that one of the mental mind treatments was a person asking about how do you find self-love, and what came through, because I channel these things, is that it was about self-acceptance. And it made sense to me. We need to accept ourselves, and that can come into the loving ourselves, because until we accept our foibles, until we accept that we may not be 100% correct at any given time, we're loved regardless. And therefore, we need to accept that. That's why I'm so big on self-forgiveness, which I've spoken about many times. Know that you are loved. Know that this beautiful loving energy works with you to create what you want to the best of the ability that you have, because most of us have little things that block it, stop it, or whatever. But we learn, because if I've learned, you can too. It's easy enough. It's just giving up the resistance to being loved. The resistance that says, I'm not worthy. The resistance that says, I do not deserve. You do. You are worthy. You do deserve. And by loving yourself, it makes it a lot easier. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for those of you who subscribe. It helps me in being here a lot easier. I don't want to be speaking to zero, I must admit. But also, too, is your comments. I appreciate them. And the shares, all these things, they all go to make my life a little fuller. And I just want to wish you the very, very best in every which way that there is. And I do that by just saying love to all, and thank you. Bye.